I had a patient, he was in his late 40s. He was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. We were talking about his symptom management and how his pain was going, and he said his pain was an 8. You don't have to hurt like this. There's things that we can do to help give you better quality of life. He said, if I take any more pain medicine, I can't drive my car. That is whenever I feel like I really became a hospice nurse. People have a right to choose.
Welcome to In Good Company, Elder Care in Your Backyard. Kim, how long have you been in hospice?
Since 99.
99.
Was my first year. Mm-hmm.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I bet you've seen a lot in that 99 years.
Yes, it's changed my life.
Yeah. What's your most interesting story from hospice?
One of my most interesting stories was I had a patient, he was in his late 40s, and he was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. They couldn't do anything. We did most of our visits on the front porch. It was in New Mexico, so it was, 5 inches of rain a year. So usually everything was, nice and sunny. And he had a sports car outside. I think it was a Trans Am that he had completely restored. And so he was just all about this vehicle. And one day I went to go see him, and he was quite the jokester. He always told funny stories. And we were talking about his symptom management and how his pain was going, and he said his pain was an 8. And so back then, we didn't have computers or anything, so I get out my little handwritten med list for him, and I start looking at it and say, okay, well, I'll call the doctor. I'll see if I can get this increased. We'll change this medicine, and, I'll get back with you. And he reached over, and he just kind of patted my leg, and he said, never mind. He said, I don't have any pain. And I was looking at him, and I was waiting for this joke to happen, and he was just smiling at me. And I thought, okay, something has changed. It's like, what did I just say before his face did this, And I said, well, maybe I've overstepped a little bit. And I said, you be really honest with me, and I'll be really honest with you. And he said, deal. And I said, what is your pain? And he said, my pain's an 8. And I told him, I said, you don't have to hurt like this. There's things that we can do to help give you better quality of life. And I said, what do you want me to do? And he said, I don't want you to do anything. And I said, why? And he said, Kim, he said, if I take any more pain medicine, I can't drive my car. And for me at that moment, that was pivotal for me, because in healthcare, a lot of times we tell the patients it's your choice, you get to choose your treatment. But as soon as someone doesn't choose what the doctor or what the nurse or whoever is telling them, they choose to not do that, then they're listed as non-compliant. And so for me, that was pivotal that day. That is whenever I feel like I really became a hospice nurse, because it's his journey. I'm fine. I'll be Miss Daisy, and I'll sit in that back seat. Doesn't matter to me. But for him, that was his dignity.
Yeah.
That was who he was. And that was what was most important to him. And so his little ranch that he lived on, the house was kind of in the center. So it was probably 2 miles or so down to where the mailbox was. And up until his last week of life, he would get into that car. He would drive down, pull up, check his mail, back up, and drive back up to the house again. So up until that last week.
Wow.
And so that was just pretty amazing.
That is neat.
It really was. But people have a right to choose. They have a right to choose what they want as far as symptom management goes. They have a right to choose how much pain that they want to have or not want to have.
Yeah.
They deserve to know and to feel like they have a voice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people may have a misconception that hospice is driven by the hospice itself, but
Yes.
it's not really the case. No. Are there other examples of that where we're tailoring things to what the patients want?
We had a patient not all that many years ago. And for her religious reasons, she did not want any pain medicine. And that was kind of difficult for some of the staff to understand that. But it's just coming back to it's their journey. It's what they want. If she changed her mind, decided she wanted the pain medicine, it was there. If not, then we did other things. We did some essential oils. We did some massage. We did heat and ice,
Right.
and to where she didn't feel like that it was, she felt that part of her religious experience is that Christ suffered pain, and she was okay if she needed to suffer pain. And so we could have very easily stepped on toes and pushed it to be our way,
Right.
or what that particular nurse wanted, but we didn't. We did it the way she wanted it done.
Yeah. 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 I'll never forget. This is totally veering in a whole nother direction, but I'll never forget when, this is several years ago, but you came into my office and you're like, I have a unique situation. I have a couple that they're going to be spending their last anniversary together. And there's particular medication that they would like to utilize
Yep.
for that anniversary.
Yep.
And, are we okay with covering the cost of that? And I was like, absolutely.
Yep.
Like, that's just as much of an important part of life as anything.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, it is. It is that family connection. And that's one thing that I think that we really try to let them know is you guys have been talking for 60 years. Don't stop now. These are going to be some of the most deep and rememberable conversations that you'll ever have.
Yeah.
Sometimes just being able to call that white elephant out sitting in the living room, and just being able to say, this is where we are. And us talking about it isn't going to change
Yeah.
inevitably what's going to happen, but it could change. It could change and bring people closer together.
Right.
And it could change to some of the past, even some of the past hurts that happened. I mean, you can't be in a friendship of 2 days or a marriage of 60 years and not have done something to,
Right.
rock the boat. Go ahead and talk about those things.
Right.
Don't have any regrets. And I think that's a big piece of it is just don't have any regrets.
Some people really hesitate making a hospice decision during the holidays, and they may think that that's going to really affect the family dynamic in a negative way. Mm-hmm. But that's not always the case.
No. In my experience through the years, it has actually brought people closer together. And it has brought, it doesn't matter who comes over to the house, they're going to see the decline. They're going to see that their grandmother or grandfather is not doing well, or their mom or dad. They're going to maybe not understand the full extent of it as to what it means or where to go from that point. And I think that's why these things are so important, that we're talking about these, the issues and some of the things that hospice can do when they come in. I think some of the most important things that we can do at the holidays is be honest. And if we see our parent struggling and we see the decline in our parent, we can wait to get them help. But then we're pushing into taking extra time away from work. We're pushing to take an extra time away from other things that need our attention when we could have just handled it in the beginning. Being able to admit that someone's days are getting shorter, that they have a life-limiting illness, and what do we need to do about those things? can actually make the holidays even better, because if we can reprioritize some of the past conflicts that happened, being able to let some of those things go and reprioritize our holidays, hearing grandma's stories again, taking notes about those things. You know, it's really funny because so many times when people pass away, there's an event that happens. It's a car wreck. It's a heart attack. It's these things that we don't get to have those last moments together.
Yeah.
And when you have hospice coming in, you know that days are numbered.
Right.
And making that time more special and those holidays more special. You know, Mom, where's that, secret cookbook that you've got? And talking about some of those stories.
Yeah.
You know, around, the holidays were so much, this is America, we eat,
Yeah.
And so there's so many things that happen around those recipes, One of my big things is I have my grandmother's cast iron pot.
Yeah.
And all the kids know those stories, and I think it's important to have those conversations. It's important to include Mom or Dad into those things. If she's not able to get up and get in the kitchen and cook, and somebody else is going to be cooking, that can be really hard.
Yeah.
That can be really hard for her to be able to not be involved. One time we had a patient and the daughter met me at the door and she said, Mom is so angry. We just don't know what's going on. Everybody's going to be here for Christmas and she's just snapping at everybody. We don't know what's going on. So I went in and talked to her and she was angry because everybody was going to be cooking her meal that she always cooked for everybody. So it was a loss of control. It was a loss of her place.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we decided to do was that we moved her little lift chair into the kitchen, and she had a bag of potatoes and a pot and a knife, and she was able to, peel those potatoes and supervise everybody else in the kitchen, And so I think it really made those holidays a lot better for them. And I'm sure every Christmas they talk about that again when Grandma was in the kitchen, But it's making memories still. When these things happen and the end of life is coming up and the terminal diagnoses and stuff are there, we have, kind of two choices. We can either go ahead and embrace it and know this is what's going to happen and make sure that they enjoy the family and stuff that comes in, or we can just put it under the carpet and sweep it away and not have some of these, what looks like very difficult conversations, but are actually beautiful conversations that we can have.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking about how challenging it is for people who are kind of in the squeeze. They've got older parents that are declining and maybe even need hospice. And then they have older kids that are living their own lives and trying to get all of that coordinated and bring people together. And, when it's interesting, it seems like when grandma or grandpa goes on hospice, then all of a sudden all the kids are able to make it to Christmas and everybody prioritizes that because they really believe it's the last Christmas, and it ends up being kind of magical in a way.
Absolutely.
Because that kind of sad news also circles the wagons in a family, and everybody kind of comes together. I think it's beautiful in its own way. Let me switch gears to the kind of the medical side of things a little bit. Hospice, statistically, when people go on to hospice versus those who don't, tend to live an additional 29 days. Why do you think that is?
I really feel like it's for symptom management, medications, making sure that they have the right medications, making sure that things aren't overlapping, that they're taking too many of the same types of medications, being able to have someone come in and fill that med box and be able to know that, okay, yes, we took these medicines. So many times right now we see people that they'll have 10 medications, and 2 or 3 times a day they're opening up those medication bottles and taking the one pill out and the one pill out and the one pill out. And then they can't remember if they took them already, so either they don't take them and they haven't, or they take them again, and then we have more. So I think some of that medication management comes into play really, really good. I also think that whenever you have a hospice nurse that's coming in on average twice a week, that they're going to see the weight gain, or they're going to see the edema, or they're going to see the shortness of breath that's happening during the conversation. And so we can actually get ahead of the game and go ahead and get them an antibiotic if they're, if we feel like they're having a pneumonia or something like that, trying to start, or a bronchitis. Go ahead and get them on medications, get their edema under control, where they're not having to go back into the hospital. Who wants to spend Christmas in the hospital?
Yeah, no kidding.
You're limited to who can be in there and how long visitors can be there, and you just get to be at home and be treated at home, and some of these conditions being taken care of early before it turns into a major medical issue.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize that when somebody's on hospice that there's a requirement for certain issues that, we have to get a nurse out there within an hour.
Yes.
And so it's probably some of the best care you'll ever get because of the urgency of how things are set up and the frequency of how it's set up. You said it beautifully. And I'm really surprised at how many people come on to hospice and then end up being discharged from hospice because they just end up doing so much better.
Hundreds of times, I'm sure, over the years, where we'll get a patient home from the hospital on a Friday or Saturday, not expected to even make it through the weekend. And we get in there and we start working with them and getting the medications lined out, checking their symptoms, making sure that we're staying on top of things. And we have to take them off service, because they're doing so well.
Yeah.
But that's when they get to graduate off hospice is always a celebration for us. And I think it's kind of funny that when you first have that conversation with your physician or your healthcare personnel, and they say, well, there's nothing else medically that we can do right now, and we need to go ahead and call hospice in. Nobody wants to hear those words. That is the most one of the hardest things that they've had to hear. And so they may know that they need the help. They may be willing to accept the help, but they're not happy about it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
But it is amazing how quickly that hospice staff becomes family, and that the family and the patient know that we really care and we want them to live the best days of their life and to be as symptom free as what we can possibly attain. It's really funny when we do get to have patients that graduate off service. We're excited for them. They're not excited.
Yeah.
They have gotten used to these used to be strangers coming into the home several times a week, being able to check them in, and they are kind of scared, that they're not going to have that help and that care anymore.
Yeah.
But we do follow even the patients and stuff that do graduate. We still follow those patients, and we still make phone calls periodically. Hey, how are things going? Is there anything that you need? Is there a service at Haven that could maybe help at this time?
Yeah.
What do you think is the one thing people don't talk about enough when it comes to hospice and hospice care?
The journey.
Journey.
Mm-hmm. Through the years, I have had more people that are not afraid of dying, but they're afraid of what they're going to have to go through to get there. And having some of those questions answered, having conversations about things that as far as our culture goes, we don't really talk about very much. But I think it's that journey. And when they wake up at 2:00 in the morning and they're scared, that they know that there's a phone number they can call, that they don't have to be alone anymore. They don't have to wait until the doctor's office opens. They don't have to load mom up in a vehicle in a cold winter night and drive her to the emergency room. You know, if they have hospice, they call us. We can be to their house, do the assessment, call the physician, and get medications to the home, usually in less time than they can even be triaged at the hospital.
Yeah.
And they get to stay in their own home. They do not have, and it's not going to be strangers. You know, they're going to know these people that are coming in.
Do you think there's anything that's underutilized by most people that go through hospice?
I think probably social work and chaplain services are probably the most unutilized portions of hospice. I think people think that, you know, if they need those services, it means something's wrong. And that's not what it means at all. It is another ear. It is another person that can help find resources. Our chaplains, we're not here to change anybody's religious beliefs or lack of religious beliefs. It is here just to be able to talk through some of these difficult times, and they can just be who they are. They don't have to be a hostess. They don't have to say, "Oh no, I'm fine. I'm feeling great." They can really be honest with us so that we can give them those options. What I like to think about and what I've told patients through the years has been, you're driving this car. You're in the driver's seat. Whoever you choose to be shotgun is up front with you, you know. Hospice is in the back seat. And our job is that every situation that comes up, every crossroad that we come up to, is to be able to give you the information and have a good, honest, open conversation about if we go left and we decide not to do anything, these are the pros and cons. If we go right, these are the pros and cons this way, so that they can make informed decisions. And the family knows what those informed decisions are too. We want them to be comfortable with the decisions they make. And that's why I'm not saying you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to do that, because it is their journey. It is what they want for their life.
What do families struggle with the most around making a decision to go on to hospice? And then once on hospice, what are the things that they're most surprised at?
I think in the beginning they feel like that they're going to not have any control, that they're not going to be able to pick and choose what they're wanting to do, that someone's coming into their home, into their domain, and is going to take over. And that's just not what hospice does.
Yeah.
We are here to provide education. It's not to take over. It's not to be in control. It's to allow them to be in control, but to have the knowledge that they need to be able to go forward. I think some of the scariest things is that once you talk about it, once it's out in the open, what are we going to do with it then? You know, those decisions and stuff have to be made. And if you're not talking about it, you don't have to make decisions.
Right.
But in the long run, that really limits what hospice can actually do. If we have somebody that comes on service and they're on service with us for 6 months, that is 6 months worth of teaching. That is 6 months worth of symptom management. That is 6 months of not having to go back and forth to the hospital. And if we put them on and it's, you know, just a couple of days or a week, there's very little that we can do to help prepare that family at that point. We're having to cram a lot of teaching and a lot of education and a lot of encouragement to have conversations in a very, very short period of time. And so I don't really feel like they get the full benefit of hospice. You know, sometimes that's just the way it happens. Everything's going wonderful and fine, and then there's someone has a heart attack or has a stroke, and there wasn't time to really do anything. But for the diagnoses that that come up that is recognized as life limiting, that's when some of these conversations really need to start happening. Mom, what do you want? I remember after my mother died, I was talking to my dad, and I said, Dad, we've got, Mom said that whenever you pass away, you're going to be cremated, and then she wants y'all's ashes to be mixed together and then just put out in nature someplace, where you love to be. And he looked at me and he said, well, I don't want to be cremated. I want to be buried. That was your mother's thing. And I said, well, Dad, she's already got music picked out for your celebration of life. So you better tell me what you want.
Yeah. Those conversations are hard.
They are hard. They are hard. But honestly, what's harder than that is the regret of not having them.
Yeah.
That's really, and when you really look at it, that's the hardest part, is not having those conversations, or getting to a place where that loved one isn't able to make those decisions, and you're the one left to make those decisions, and you don't know what they really wanted.
Yeah. So true. One of the things that we've kind of run up against lately is because some people come on the hospice so late, and I think sometimes the families are waiting for the physician to bring it up, and the physician's waiting for the family to bring it up. But during our, the process of learning more about this, self-referral seems to be kind of top of the list. And even just calling a hospice and asking questions can be pretty productive. How does the self-referral process work?
Oh, it's easy. You just come by the office, you pick up the phone, and just start talking. One of the questions that I always like to ask is, what happened today to make you pick up that phone call? What changes has been going on today that made you realize that this needs to happen? And that opens up so many doors, because number one, they know that you're not scared of these conversations, that you want to help them. The other thing is that it gives them, it's just kind of an open-ended question where they're free to say whatever is going on in that person's life, and to the changes and stuff that are being seen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's very simple for self-referral. You come in, you call, we kind of talk about what hospice is and what hospice isn't. See what the diagnosis is, see what kind of medications they're on, find out who the physician is, and either we can call the physician and go ahead and say, they've come by the office, or they've called today and they're interested in hospice. Can we get an order? Or if the family wants to call the doctor and stuff themselves, then they can call, and it's really that easy. It doesn't take long at all.
Do you feel like that physicians are pretty open to hospice, or do you get pushback at all from physicians?
Most physicians are very open to hospice. And I think a lot of that's changed probably over the last 10 years or so, where hospice is becoming not so scary anymore, and it is a choice, and it is part of their, part of a journey, and, we're all going to have to go through this at some point with either ourselves or somebody that we love. And I think the doctors are much more open to hospice, and like with our hospice, we really encourage those attending physicians to stay attending physicians with that patient. If the physician feels like that, they want the hospice physician to pick it up at that point, that's a conversation we have with the patient and family, is that your physician has wanted hospice to pick up on this. Is this okay with you? These are our physicians. Who would you like to be your attending?
Yeah, that's really good. Knowing what you know about hospice now, have you already had these conversations with your own family?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. My mother did not get the opportunity to have hospice, and I think that's one of my biggest regrets. is she passed away in the hospital. She didn't get to make it home. And so my family knows what I want. In the back of my Bible, I have written the songs that I want played at my celebration of life. I want to be cremated.
Yeah.
And so we've had those conversations. My husband is totally pro hospice, but that's really, really hard for him to have those conversations. Mm-hmm. He'll talk about what he wants, but he won't talk about what I want,
Yeah.
And so
fingers in the ears, la 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 la.
Not happening, But it is important to know. I don't, we've talked about, if I'm in a car wreck and I am not, they're having to keep me alive on a vent and those things that I don't want that. And it's not because it's something that I don't want. It's because I don't want my family to go through that.
Right.
So I think being able to know what your loved one wants and why they want it that way helps open up more conversations. Sometimes people say, well, I want to be resuscitated, but I don't want to be on a vent and I don't want the medications and don't want these things. And that gives the medical personnel an opening to be able to say, that's really not how CPR works. That's really not how resuscitation and stuff is, and being able to give them not the story that you see on TV, but in real life, what that actually entails and what that actually means.
So let's dig into that just a little bit. So can you help folks understand what's reasonable and what's not necessarily?
Yeah. If when someone is older and they're very frail and we do CPR, those ribs break, and so then you have not only the pain of broken, if anybody's ever had a broken rib and trying to breathe, so we go into some of the issues that happen during CPR. Mm-hmm. You've got the pain from the compressions. You've got IVs going because there's certain medicines that they need to do to be able to help support you. A lot of times you're intubated. Depending on how long you've been without oxygen, comes other issues and other problems and stuff with that. If you're having surgery and you code on the table, that's different than having an accident or having a life-limiting illness that that is causing some of these problems.
Yeah.
But again, it's just something in our culture that we don't talk about very often. These are hard conversations. I think sometimes people feel like, well, if you talk about it, they're going to happen. And, sometimes we're talking about them because it is fixing to happen and we know it's fixing to happen.
Right.
But being able to tell your family whether you want antibiotics or not, whether you want to have CPR or not, whether you want oxygen, whether you want IV fluids, those things are really important for that family. The one that when you're not able to make those decisions and someone has to make those decisions for you, it takes a lot of pressure and a lot of stress off of that person when they know what you wanted and that they know that that these are your wishes that they can help fulfill.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like you're right. Like in our society, the default is fight no matter what. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that includes a lot of suffering from the medical system itself. Mm-hmm. Our treatments, unfortunately, sometimes come with a big price, and not just financially, but also, and that's some feedback that I've heard is that folks are like, we spent several $100,000 and put mom or dad through the ringer. Mm-hmm. And so their last 6 months were pretty miserable. Mm-hmm. And, maybe we should have gone to hospice sooner. Mm-hmm. And so the whole question around when does medicine do more harm than good it's a gray area, obviously, and it's difficult, and each person has to make their own decision. But it's something that as a society, we really got to look at more carefully, because unfortunately, to even more complicate things, there's, a system that's run by big corporations that have a profit motive. And so that adds a layer of complexity. You've got physicians and surgeons that are just trying to do their job, but their job is to save lives. And, when everything looks, fixable, or life is extendable, regardless of the price, that does add a layer of complication that I think we just need to talk about more.
Yeah. I think, and that talking about things is, like I said, it's very hard conversations to be able to have. But what's harder than that is trying to make those decisions and not having any idea what they really wanted.
Yeah.
And wondering, did she want to be intubated? Did she want to have all these things done? I remember when my mother died, we had gone back up to the hospital, of course, and stuff. And even whenever I was working the floor of the hospital, if they weren't my patients, I didn't look in those rooms. To me, it was just a respect, and it was just a privacy piece that I always felt was just important. And so I always just walk down the hall, and I really don't look into rooms. But this day I had come around the corner. Like I said, I was the last one there, and I was coming around the corner, and it just kind of shocked me a little bit, because there was this lady in the ICU, and she had white hair, and it was kind of spiky the way my mother had her hair, and it just looked like my mom for a second, But this lady was intubated. I don't know how many IV poles she had in her room, beeping and the ventilator and all that stuff. And I remember thinking, my mother had been sick and had issues since I was in 6th grade. And so every time she would go into the hospital, Mother would have conversations with me. I knew what she wanted. And I walked past that, and it was like, thank you, Lord, for not, because she never would have wanted this.
Yeah.
But I knew what she wanted, and I knew what she didn't want.
Right.
And I wasn't the one making those decisions at that point. It just happened. She just died without us having to do those things. But I knew what she wanted. Yeah. And there wouldn't have been a question in my mind that I would not have allowed her to have been hooked up to all of that, because I knew this wasn't what she wanted.
Yeah, it's one of the largest motivating factors of this podcast is the pain that I even personally had because of what I didn't know, that I'm learning and hopefully sharing with everyone, is that, there are pros and cons to everything. Every decision has a consequence and a benefit. And so helping people just know what those consequences are, because it's just like you said, most people don't know what they're going to get put through in those circumstances. And, there are fates worse than death.
Yes.
There truly are.
Yes.
And unfortunately, under the guise of helping, we're going to save your life, that sort of thing. And I want to find that sweet spot. I want to fight when it's a good fight to be had. And I want to encourage people to fight as hard as absolutely possible to live as long as, they want to. And it is very much a personal choice. But I don't want people walking into those decisions without understanding what those consequences are. so they can really make a decision for themselves and that sort of thing. And so digging into that. So having said that, what are your choices for how far you want things to go?
My journey, and what I can tell you that I want for my journey at this moment in my life is I don't want to be hooked up to machines. I don't want my family to come to the hospital and have to visit me and visit me and visit me when there's no chance,
Yeah.
I want to be able to enjoy my family. And as long as I can enjoy my family, then I'll fight. When it comes to be the point that it's not going to do any good, then I want that physician and the staff that's taking care of me, I want them to be honest with me and be able to say, this is really where we are,
Right.
And I think it's really important to start having those conversations from the beginning of a disease process that can be life-limiting. Even something, our COPD patients, our heart patients, you can live a long, long, long time with these illnesses. But be thinking about what do you want your last days to be like? What's important to you?
Right.
And to be able to give that to other people so that they know what your priorities are. Yeah. Because kind of like that guy with the car, driving my car, well, except for I do have that Mustang.
You have a nice car, Kim.
Yes. but driving a car to me is, not important.
Right.
Making sure that if my family comes over that I can, make a meal for them, that's important to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Important to me is being able to, sit around the table and talk about the day's events and what my children want for their life and what they want for their children.
Right.
Those are important things to me.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well said. Well, Kim, thank you so much for your wisdom and your insight. I think we all get to benefit from some of the stories that you shared with us and understanding hospice just a little bit better. I very much believe that some of these issues are so complicated and so individualized that the more people absorb this information, it starts to piece together their own answer for them and their family. And you really helped us with that today. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Yeah, thank you, Kim.
Thank you very much.
If you enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
And we'd love to stay connected. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, and on Instagram at In Good Company Elder Care Podcast.
You can also find us on X, formerly known as Twitter, at IGC Pod, and on TikTok at IGC Elder Care Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in to In Good Company Elder Care in Your Backyard. I'm John Ray, and I've been joined by my amazing co-host, Spencer Ernst. Special thanks to our executive producer, Alex Wallace, for helping bring this show to life. Until next time, take care, and remember, you are always in good company.